as we are going to be talking about letting children be children. Yes, talking about the proposal to shorten the lunch hour from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. So Hanif Benjamin is going to be discussing that with us this morning here on Good Morning TNT. Of course, we've got the Nescafe Dolce Gusto moment as well. We are also going to empower girls in ICT, or actually they're being empowered. We're going to find out how they're being empowered, what's taking place with respect to that. So go girls. Also sustainable development goals for Trinidad and Tobago. Remember, the representatives of the UN were here on set with us to tell us what was going to be taking place, and they did say that they were going to Tobago. Well, we are going to speak with them as they are in fact in Tobago. Also book launch. Yes, I heard it's a little bit saucy, so we're going to learn some more about that. And the EU Film Fest is also taking place. So that, so much more, this lovely Monday morning here in Trinidad and Tobago. As first day of school, back out, there's going to be traffic on the roads. We have to wait and see how many schools did actually reopen, how many were under repairs maybe for the holidays, all of that. Of course, that's going to come later on the day when the day does progress. But we need to discuss our children on the whole and letting children be children. This morning, once again, let me welcome to Good Morning Trinidad and Tobago, Hanif Benjamin of the Center for Human Development. Good morning to you, Hanif.
Good morning, Ria. Always a pleasure being here with you this early.
Yes, and it is early this morning, yes, and you're coming from South. So
indeed, indeed, but it was
so
a nice ride up, I must say.
It was.
But it was early, so as always, I'm anticipating a bumper traffic as the day progresses, but that is just the nature of Trinidad and Tobago. And you know, the conversation on in context of school being reopened today also leaves me at a sad place, because here it is again, we're having a conversation about children and or understanding the development of our children and or the lack thereof, and understanding our role and responsibilities. And clearly, again, we're seeing where decisions and or suggestions are being made without thinking about the child or children. And I think it continues to be unfortunate, because I have been one who always on this show and other platform have been advocating for the vulnerable among us. They can't protect themselves, you see? And so the question of who should protect our children, the rights and responsibilities of our children, again, is called into question.
But the argument would be made that this is a move to protect our children, shortening the lunch hour from 60 minutes, which is the debate that's on right now, shortening the lunch hour from 60 minutes to 30 minutes, so that they have less time, in a sense, to get into any sort of mischief or any sort of indiscipline to take place. So, in a sense, we are protecting our children.
Well, less time to be children. That is what I'm hearing. And you open the show letting children be children. So the less time you're talking about is less time to be children. And so, you see, what we have been doing for a long time, and we like to do that in this country, we like to move the goalposts. We're good at that. We're extremely good at that, you see? And I want to just take you through a little historical context. You see, Ria, we need to talk about pre and post slavery. I always marveled at a plantation or you know, with few slave masters and so many slaves, yet they are in control. And what happened was that they were beaten into submission. And so over time, slavery ended and post-slavery, and that tradition of beating people to stay into submission. So you didn't do well in your test, you were beaten. You talk in class, you were beaten. You get the math, some wrong, you were beaten. You couldn't read the sentence accurately, you were beaten. So everything you were beaten for. And so somewhere along the line, Ria, corporal punishment was removed. And to our surprise, without any other form of discipline measures, we were left stumped. And so from then to now, what we have been doing is moving the goalpost to suit the situation, as opposed to understanding the situation and coming up with amicable and evidence-based treatment for the situation. So you find out that you can't beat, so teachers say, well, what we going to do now? You see, throw your hand up and say, what now? Because I can't beat you to keep you. You see, we used to keep children in check by fear. And once that fear has been removed by the rod, now we are clueless. So here again is another situation where we are suggesting that we curtail the moment when children are being developed socially. Because you see, play under psychology and children is one of the most powerful tools we have. If you want to know what's going on with a child, with your child at home, I always tell my parents, sit and observe your child play. That you will learn if your child is aggressive, passive, you know, how they fare with other children. You learn this from play. So here it is, we are saying we want to curtail for protection purposes. What we really want to do is move the goalposts so that we wouldn't have to deal with the children and their behaviors. So here it is, we don't understand the behaviors of our children. We don't understand adolescent development. We don't understand child and adolescent development. So we think that they're misbehaving. We think that they are fighting. But yet what they are doing is navigating a social cues. That is where they learn how to deal with difficult conversation. That is where they learn how to interact with other sex and stuff like that. That is where they learn what we want them to learn for the later part of their lives.
But I was going to ask you then, okay, how do we let children be children? But you're starting that conversation now. We need to let them have that play. We need to observe them when they're in that play, observe their behaviors as well. So in a sense, it's still supervised, or it still should be supervised. Even
but you and I both know, Ria, what that supervision means. Yeah. I mean, you and I both know that that supervision is sit down, hush, and be quiet. But we know that.
Yeah.
And that is what we have been saying to our children for quite some time. And then we had the advent of social media, the television, so it became easier now for the parent to just put you there and you are supervised by the electronics.
So, okay, so then how do we let children be children
The
then?
first thing, Ria, we need to understand children. We need to understand what makes children children. We have removed the umbrella of play. We have removed the umbrella of children being children. We have, listen, children don't have bruise and anything anymore because they are so much in the TV and they don't go outside and be children. And that is why we have the level of indiscipline, or to some degree, in our school, because our children are not learning how to navigate with one another. So the first sign of trouble, they respond based on what they see in society. You see? And so to avoid that, we need to allow children to navigate. And if there are difficulties, we need to use it for a teaching moment. We need, you know, when long time you and somebody have a scrub, you put two of them sit down and you say, all right, what happened? And this is what you should do and this. So we teach them. But in this world, you become a bully, right, after one event, or you are labeled an indisciplined child or this or that, rather than use these things as teachable moments.
But don't you think too that technology has a great part to play in that, in keeping the child indoors as well?
Of course. And that is a sad, you know, I'm interested because we are looking at a study to be conducted here in Trinidad. And what we want to look at is how has the internet impact that of educational, psychological, social development. Because no longer are children running outside, no longer are children getting a bruise, you see? So it's more about children growing up behind the technology. How is that going to impact on our interpersonal relationship and interpersonal development? That is why, Ria, we can do what we do on Facebook and on social media, but in person, we find it difficult to navigate that world. So when you look at that on one end and then you look at what is going on in our school system on the other, then we have a major, major challenge on our hand.
So what then should happen? What should the educator do? And what will, or what do you think will happen as a result of this, if it is approved, changing the 60 minutes to 30 minutes?
Well, first of all, I'm hoping that we're not even going to entertain the suggestion beyond today.
Well, it's being discussed.
Because to me, it is flawed. There is no research anywhere in the world, and I have checked, that support this kind of madness. That is what I call it. As a matter of fact, in other parts of the world where education and this age bracket is flourishing, they have removed the traditional setting of school. They have removed the boundaries of classroom. They have removed the boundaries of examination. They have removed the boundaries of uniform. And the children are thriving because children learn naturally through play. At that age bracket, that is how they learn, through play. And if it is remove rear, what we are asking for is some rigid and some, of course, Freud talks about, you want to teach, because Freud talks about the stages of development.
Yes.
And he speaks about when one missed a stage, what happens in latter life. And we are seeing the difficulties of this right now. So when we remove play, we're talking about damaging a society of children for years to come. We're talking about damaging their developmental milestones, their educational milestones, their psychological milestones. We're talking about damaging children. And then we are surprised when children in latter life, are doing the things that they do. And then we're all surprised, like, why is a child behaving the way they behave?
But there is already the argument that we have such a heavily academically inclined system. So from the onset, there's hardly any play in the infant department. I was even reading quite recently an educator, and he was doing some research, and he's been a teacher for like 20 years in the U.S. And we would always boast and talk about the U.S. system, where they would socialize in their infant years before they actually get into the academics. He is noticing a shift in that now, a trend in that now with the infants in the U.S., where it's more academically inclined.
It's a mixture, and that is what I have worked in the system as well. And what I notice is that, but the academia comes alongside play.
Well, what he was noticing, it was that it was more heavily academia than the play. The play was more limited than it was previously in previous years, like 20 years ago, if so much. It was more focusing on the academia simply because it was the syllabus, the system was gearing more towards that, as it is here in Trinidad and Tobago.
But in Trinidad and Tobago, it has been that way forever.
Yes.
And unfortunately, both ministers then and now of education have said quite clearly something is not working. Quite clearly. Dr. Tim Gopi Singh then indicated that there are 2,000 students in the primary school system who have been diagnosed with mental illness. The now Minister of Education has said, and this is very interesting, that 17,000 students write the SC, right, and go on to secondary school. But that same cohort of 17,000 plus, when they get to CXC, 50% of them don't reach a full certificate. What does that tell us? That somewhere along the line in that 5-year period, we have lost about 40% of our students, either through dropout or whatever the situation might be. So Riyadh, so is it then that it is working? And that is a kind of quantitative analysis we need to be looking at. Why is it that 17,000 would write the SCA or sit the SCA, and that same cohort, only 50% would reach to a full certificate? Then we must look at, again, moving the goalpost. You see, because you had to write this and you had to reach a certain marks before you could move on. When that wasn't working, what we did, rather than fix the issue, we moved the goalpost to everybody getting a free pass. So when you look at the people who were left behind then, and you look at the percentages of people dropping out between Form 1s and to 5, then it is saying to us that there is a correlation between moving that goalpost, you see? And so here again, we have not looked at the issue of why our children is not succeeding. We are looking at moving the goalpost to make it appear as if everybody's moving forward. So now we get to CXC where you can't hide. So it's either 50% don't make it to the CXC, and those who did make it, less than 30% of that is they have a full certificate. You see, Ria? So we need to understand that there is a number of things that we need to deal with. We need to look at mental illnesses in our school system. We need to look at serious emotional disturbances as a result of family problem, community violence, domestic violence, poverty, and all those things. We also need to look at learning disabilities in our school system, as well as children who are on the autism spectrum. We need to look at what might be causing some of the indiscipline in our school. Children don't wake up and decide to be indisciplined, Ria.
But who's supposed to do this?
That is a question. So everybody points a finger as classic Trinidad and Tobago, you see? And because we're pointing the finger and we don't have the conversation with child in mind, we miss that. We're talking about a student support system that is woefully lacking. As a matter of fact, yesterday I read where today the social worker is supposed to be on some type of action because they have not been paid, and they are an integral, critical component right, in our school system. We have teachers who are not understanding adolescent and child development, because my subject area is social studies, math, or science, so I don't need to understand that. We have a government who cannot seem to understand that mental illness is and has been a major hurdle in our education system from all levels. You see, so real, when you ask the question, who should be doing this? We should be doing this, right? But unfortunately, we don't see it as important. We see the test scores. We see the statistics. We see how many children did not pass, how many children should have passed, without looking at why these 10,000 students did not make the cut to CXC certification. Why the 10,000 students did not make the cut beyond CXC. No one is asking these questions, and no one is assessing. Our school system really should have a robust mental health unit. I'm not talking about, we have child guidance. Child guidance should be in every school district, not one district for all of South and one district for all of North, and you have children waiting for 2 and 3 years. So real, I mean, we can look at so many different things in order to fix the system, and it is not hard.
All right. Well, we will be discussing this in more detail, and I would like to open up the phone lines as well.
Definitely.
For people to call through at 622-4141 extension 4 and join this discussion here this morning, letting children be children before they get into all the academia. We are very academically inclined in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is something that needs to change by the hook or the crook. Don't know how, when, but we'll be right back with this discussion and more. Stay with us. And we are back, and that coffee definitely made me feel good this morning. And this is exactly what I think, Hanif, we all need to do.
I love it. I love it. I'm going to take a picture of it. I think it is important.
It is something, yes. And things will get done. When they get done, they will get done. But I'm only one person. So
I need to learn that.
You do. You definitely do. So, Hanif, as I say that, I'm cutting your lunch hour.
You see, and I'm going to go to the union, right? Because you have no right to cut my lunch hour. You don't care about my well-being. You don't care how I feel, right? You don't care that I take at least half an hour to eat and then I meditate during my lunch hour.
You can cut down on the meditation, Hanif. No, you don't need the meditation.
But I need meditation to center myself for the afternoon period. You see? And so we could have this conversation all day. And I can see you also with a placard because you need your lunch hour. And so really it takes me back to what I do best, which is advocacy. No one is advocating for our children. So we have the Principals Association, we have the tutor, and the conversation is around, of course, tutor as a union, and they should talk about the collective bargaining process and all of that. But within that, nobody is saying, what about the children? I've been in the school system here during a lunchtime, and it takes at least, especially for school feeding, 15 to 20 minutes to effectively get the lunch out to our children.
And then there are cafeterias that also take time, lines in cafeterias.
So then the technology of it in itself.
Bathroom, going to the bathroom, all of this.
I mean, I can't understand the conversation and the logic behind it, and I would like someone to sit me down and say, Hanif, this is the research and this is why we are suggesting. Right, as opposed to us learning how to deal with and understand how. You see? Because no one is speaking to our children and asking, why is this important? You ask any child in primary school why school is important, they'll tell you because I come to play and I'm a friend and the socialization. You see, and we think that socialization is not necessary, it is not important. And we don't see the significance of it. And that is why we treat children the way we treat them. You see, I remember I was buying doubles by UB there, and a child was really playing. It was during the holidays, they were, and the parents, sit down, behave, and they were using other kind of words. And those things really riled me up. And I said to the man, I said, asking a child 5 years to sit and behave in a corner is like asking the breeze not to blow.
Yeah.
And he got confused with that analogy. You can't ask. There's no way. I said what you should do is create a safe space for him to play, so that he will be out of harm's way. And so, the woman said, I like that. And she was all, let us see drink from the Claire. So he was able to now play in the corner. I tell parents, don't tell a child and beat the child when they write on the wall. create a space so they can write.
Yeah.
I tell people, don't you know, punish a child when they do something. Find a positive in what it is and create opportunities for our young children to flourish, because they will write on the walls.
Okay, so in situations like that you're describing, how about the 60 minutes is cut down to 30 minutes? That is done in that time period, albeit it's in the confines of a classroom, the walls of a classroom, or maybe you can
That
even
is
take
a
them
challenge.
out, or maybe you can even take them out if possible and do similar activities.
Ray, you were a teacher, right?
Yes.
Right. And what you asking, I know you're playing devil's advocate, so I'm going to trade back at you. What you asking there, would that ever be possible?
Depends on the size of the class, depends on the age of the children, but it will take some doing, and to get, it's like teaching. It's just like another
So
teaching.
you're going to ask Lindsay Judah and his team to teach during their lunch hour.
That's what it was, and it's serious supervision at that point.
Oh, okay.
That you need to do in that 30 minutes.
Right.
After hustling
We
and
will
working
get
down your
snow in
lunch.
Trinidad this winter, and I anticipate the snow. But Rhea, between you and I, asking children to remain in a confined area for the time that they're already in there. People who teach at primary school, preschool level know the difficulty, the restlessness in children.
Yes.
When within a confined period for a long period. And I find having a child sit in a class for 7 or 8 hours a day is already torturous.
One of the problems with that as well is that, remember, we've got your desks and everything inside there as well, so it's difficult for them to move to, so they're still basically in a pen.
Let me tell you,
for want of a better word.
the reality is this will turn into a shouting match, because I'm frustrated, you're frustrated, and we're in an enclosed area.
Yeah.
So what we're going to have is sit down, hush, behave. Miss this one, hit me. Miss that, assert this. That is what we're going to have.
Yeah.
Let us sit and really have an educated conversation about child and adolescent development. Let us sit and not move the goalpost to suit our own benefits. Let us find out why our children are behaving the way they behave. Let us get the mechanism and the people who can, in fact, do this job. Every time I come here, every week in our weekly segment, I speak about the power of social work and what they can do in our school if they are allowed to be effective.
I just want to give all the numbers, 622-4141, extension 4, if anybody wants to call and join the conversation. That's 622-4141, extension 4. Hanif, I also wanted, and as I gave out the number, the question flew out of my head, basically, with respect to dealing with children. But teachers, I remember when I went to training college, psychology was part of the curricula. We had to do psychology. Now, this is for primary schools. Secondary schools, unfortunately, they did their degree and then they were put into the system, so they had really no knowledge of psychology. Now, things have changed a little bit with respect to teacher training and teacher learning, where psychology is a part of their course study. But how many people really understand psychology, and teachers are able to use that psychology that they're taught, because they are taught it?
The challenge, I think, is the methodology. And I think psychology is taught as well. You have to do this, so it's a class, as opposed to a serious.
And because you learn about the human being.
Of course. And just this weekend, well, last Friday, I had the opportunity to do a training at Bishop's East, and what we were able to look at is how understanding adolescent and the brain of the children, psychology of the child, how that has impact their ability to deliver. You see, yeah, so we have a call?
We have Paula Seiko on the line. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. Hi, Rhea and Hanif. You all are doing such a good job in terms of your conversation this morning and switching this thing to what we're supposed to be focusing on, which is child development. And I realize you've just gotten into that segment of the conversation. And it's true, even for my own 3 children, despite the challenges of the academic and so on, I do believe that play and learning and fun is an important part of child development and human development, and it makes them overall better. For me, one of the issues I've had is, where does the vocation of teaching intervene? And, my concern then is, because principals, I understand their frustration in that they are challenged during this free time, this lunchtime, when children are supposed to be out, in finding adequate supervision for children. Not necessarily to say bring them back into a classroom, but to make sure that while they're out there and interacting and so on, that someone is available to ensure that they are being safe and that things are happening as they should.
Yes.
And that conversation, I think, seems to be missed because, you know, if not teachers, then who will supervise during that point in time? Right? And I understand, yes, teachers need a break. Does it mean then that we need to have additional staff available for those periods? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but this is a suggestion that I think needs to come from the teaching fraternity. I think Mr. Dudai and they are challenged to find out what are the best practices and what they will be willing to offer in a scenario when our country is suffering from a real situation of child indiscipline in schools. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Paulo Seco, for joining us this morning.
And again, what Paulo Seco is speaking about is moving the goalposts again. And I think it is a fitting place to end the conversation in that we need to leave the children as is, and we, the professionals and the adults, find a way to deal with what is going on. Not move the goalposts for the children to move, but find real evidence-based, real-time practices that can aid with what we're seeing going on in our school system.
So the discussions continue, whether it's going to change or not from 60 to 30. We are waiting to see. Break time is also going to be cut from that as well. Play very important to children, whether it's supervised play or not supervised play, any type of play. It's how children develop. It's part of their development. So the discussion continues, and we'll wait to see what the results will be. Thank you very much, Hanif, once again this morning for being here and discussing this topic with us. Later on, Talk City 91.1 FM.